The 2024-25 Premier League campaign is on the horizon. In preparation, we're previewing every single team and discussing how they'll shape up over the next campaign. We take a look at the transfer business conducted by the teams so far and offer suggestions of who else they should move for before the season gets started. Now we're on to Liverpool. It's the start of a new era at Anfield as Arne Slot takes the reins from legendary manager Jurgen Klopp. We analyse how Slot will line up his new side and why they've been so inactive in the transfer market. This is our 2024-25 season preview for Liverpool. Alright, let's talk about Liverpool then. We like to start these by looking back at last season, and 23-24 was a strange campaign with Liverpool. Obviously, they had legendary manager Jurgen Klopp depart at the end of the last campaign, and it felt like a season, obviously, with Klopp departing, everyone was going, oh, they're going to win the treble, they're going to win the quadruple, we want to win everything. And they came out of it with just a Carabao Cup title. It's a little bit disappointing, but I don't know, was last season disappointing for Liverpool? What do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've always been a firm believer that a manager announcing they're going to leave before the season ends has never gone well. You know, whenever a manager goes mid-season, I'm leaving, then suddenly things don't work out the way you wanted to. And yes, I think not only was last season a little bit disappointing because they only won one trophy, but also disappointing because obviously they wanted to win more with Klopp's last year. I think overall, even if Klopp was staying, one Carabao Cup wouldn't have been the ideal for Liverpool. But obviously they wanted to, a legendary manager departing. On top of that, it's a bit of a disappointment, I feel, there for Liverpool, and they'll be hoping for something much better going into this season. A bit of a new era at Liverpool, really. You know, changing of the guard, Arne Slot coming in. Intriguing to see how it goes.
I do think when you consider the context of the season, though, it wasn't all terrible. I think the Premier League, losing that is no disappointment.
No,
it's a disappointment, but it's not a surprise because City and Arsenal have both been so strong. Liverpool fell away in the last few months of the season. The Carabao Cup win, it's a solid trophy. The final, they weren't incredible, but Chelsea were worse, so they won that. I think, again, the FA Cup, they wanted to go deeper. I think, for me, the biggest disappointment was the Europa League because that was a very winnable competition for them. And so I think they will feel somewhat frustrated by that. But I don't think, what coming away with a trophy at the end of the day is never a terrible season. And given that no side in the English divisions came away with more than one trophy last season, that's not too bad. Arsenal won the Community Shield, United got the FA Cup, City got the league. So everyone came away with something.
Well, that's the thing with Arsenal as well, is obviously they won the Carabao Cup. The league is very difficult to win, and then in the other two competitions that you spoke about, they lost to the eventual winners in Man United and Atalanta. So overall, I think that, as you say, it's disappointing, but realistically, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. It was very. The Europa League, they probably should have beat Atalanta, let's be honest, but that was a very good side, and clearly they are very good. They went on to win it and they beat Leverkusen, so maybe after all that isn't such a problem.
Very true. Let's move on into 24-25 then. Now, normally at this point in the video, we would go over to the incomings and outgoings screen. However, there's only one incoming at Anfield this summer, and it's not a player. It's, of course, manager Arne Slot. So let's have a look at him instead. 45-year-old Arne Slot. He's been linked with the Premier League before. He's linked with the move to Tottenham last summer before they brought in Ange Postecoglou. So he's a manager who's really done very well in the Eredivisie and has been linked with a move to the Premier League for a while now. He was at Canberra, then Alkmaar, then Feyenoord most recently, now moved to Liverpool. I think it's a very interesting appointment. There's a lot of unknowns here because, yes, Eredivisie title in 22-23, but last campaign to lose the title to Peter Bosz, his PSV side, I think that's somewhat disappointing. I think Feyenoord would have wanted to go back-to-back, and in that regard, I think there are some question marks around Arne Slot. I also think this is a very big system change because you're going from a very transitional, pressing-based style of play. We all know how infamous or famous actually Jurgen Klopp's gegenpressing style is. They're now moving to a much more Guardiolian possession-based football. In fact, Arne Slot was very similar to Guardiola, who is a disciple of Pep. So very interesting to see now because I think every team at the top is going to play identical football. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, there are some interesting things he does. Inverted fullbacks, they're all the rage at the moment. He inverts from the right-hand side, and even the left-hand side can be a bit of a defensive fullback, but can also push forward a little bit. And everything seems to flow through a very technically proficient defensive midfielder. At Feyenoord, this was Mats Wijfer, but also Zaruki played that role, who isn't the most technically proficient, which does bode well for Endo. And a lot of people say McAllister suited perfectly to that Mats Wijfer role, which is true, but I think Endo can also play that role. The other thing is to consider the wingers, because obviously that's the biggest change for Liverpool this season. Is they're going from a very counter-attacking, very transitional team, which suits Mohamed Salah, suits Darwin Núñez, suits Cody Gakpo, and players like Jota as well, to a side that's very much more possession based. It's about having the ball and knocking it about well and controlling games, and that's going to be very different for players like Salah to adapt to. And I think that's going to come in especially on that left hand side, because I don't think people like Gakpo or Núñez or Jota will be able to play that role. So that opens up a big question about what they do with those players.
Yeah, and it does interest me that it's very rare that you see a manager come in and not bring in anyone. So, because usually...
Not bring anyone in yet.
Yeah, and there's still time to bring, and I'd expect him to, because it is a bit... for Liverpool, it's probably a bit concerning, because that change in style, with no new players coming in so far, means that Slot is... But, he's bargaining on making the current players play that way. And as you say, some of them won't be able to do it, some of them won't be able to do it yet. So, if they haven't got there yet, Liverpool need to account for that. I'm very intrigued to see how it works. I think transfers are going to be very necessary, though.
Yeah. However, if there is one thing that he is very good at doing, Arne Slot, it is transforming players to play a different role. At AZ Alkmaar, he turned Jordi Clasie from a central midfielder into a centre half, despite him being 5'6". So that was quite phenomenal.
Impressive.
Last season at Feyenoord, Geertruida played more as a left back rather than a right back. He tended to play right back, centre half. He played left back for them last season. So it's not uncommon that he will change players' positions. And I think this has been a huge debate around Trent Alexander-Arnold, whether he will push him into midfield. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does. However, I'm not sure he is suited to playing as an 8 in this slot system. Let's get on over to the tactics screen, because I want to talk about Alexander-Arnold first, then at right back, because they've got Trent and they've got Conor Bradley there. I think Bradley's very good, and that may be a reason you push Trent on, because Bradley's good enough to start. And actually, if you look at that right midfield spot, that right 8, that is Jones, Elliott and Gravenberch. Now, I highly rate Curtis Jones. I think there's a lot of love for Harvey Elliott at Liverpool. I don't think Gravenberch had a great start, but I think those three cover that role quite nicely. I think they're all exactly what you want from that right 8. My question mark around Trent is, yes, he's very creative. He's a decent finisher, to be fair. We've seen that on quite a few occasions. But is he good enough to play in an attacking sense? Is he good enough to play in that 8 role? And I think what you lose massively is his crossing ability. Yeah. If you play him in the pivot, in that inverted pivot, you still get that long range passing, which is so effective. So I think it would be a loss to play Trent in one of those attacking 8s. I think he'd be better playing that inverted role. I wouldn't be surprised if they did try Trent in midfield, though. I think that could work as well. Let's look at the rest of the defence. In goal, they're fairly sorted. Alisson and Kelleher. Alisson's not got a huge amount of time left on his contract. I think he did have an extension, though, didn't he, fairly recently? So they're not too bad there. And Jaume Kelleher is proving to be quite the handy backup. Yeah. Then at centre-half, you've got Konate and Kwanzaa. I think we'll start to see more of Jarrell Kwanzaa again this season.
Really good player.
The big question mark for me is at left centre-half, because you've only got Virgil van Dijk. Now, obviously, Joe Gomez can play there, and I think he'll do a fine job there. I put Gomez at left-back, because I think that's where he's going to start this season. And I have got a lot of question marks around Andy Robertson, because if you look at how Slot plays, very similar to Arteta, very similar to Guardiola, he uses that left back as a left centre half in possession. So that's going to open up a lot of questions, because I think Robertson could do that role. I definitely don't think Tsimikas could. No. But I guess we'll see. I mean, not in the sense that he couldn't do it, I just don't think he'd be great there. He's a footballer, he can play a different position, but I don't think he'd be great there. So that opens up a big question. I think Joe Gomez will be the one that starts most there. We've seen him be able to play left back, right back, centre half as well. So my big question mark is what they do with Tsimikas and Robertson this season, because the two of them are both backups in theory. I mean, obviously we might see Robertson play there, and we might see Slot change his system, but if he plays like he did at Feyenoord, I think it'll be Gomez playing that left back role. My big question mark, as I say, is around that Van Dijk position, because I think they may look to bring in I think they should look to bring another option, because I don't think Van Dijk will renew his contract, and that obviously opens up question marks. For me, the big thing for Liverpool is, if you look at their squad right now, I think they're good enough going into this season to still be competitive. When you consider that Salah's contract's up next summer, I think Van Dijk's contract's up next summer, Trent is being linked with a move away to Real Madrid, for me it's about future planning. Yeah. Because if you don't sign them to new contracts and they leave for free next summer, that's a huge loss. Yeah. That's a 100%. Huge loss for Liverpool. So you've either got to go, well, are you going to be here in a year's time? And if not, you've got to try and look at selling him now, I think. Or if not, you're going to lose him for nothing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of money there.
Well, exactly.
I'm not saying you could get a ridiculous amount, but...
there were 150 million bids for Salah last summer. So, I don't know, I think you definitely could get... I'm not sure if Salah would want that move, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of money.
You can't reject that kind of money at this point in his career, realistically, because I don't think you get that kind of money for a European club because of his because of his age and because from that. But yeah, it's a big talking point for Liverpool. They're a big concern. There's a big concern here that they could lose out on a lot of money.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move further forwards then. Defensive midfield, as I've mentioned, I think McAllister is perfectly suited to that role.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see him. Because I think at Liverpool last season he was good, and a lot of the stuff he did went under the radar, but I think this season we'll start to see him unlocked a lot more.
Yes.
Because his passing range will be on full display. Slot's side play very, very wide football. They stick, both the wingers hug the touchline, you create a lot of space in midfield, and they look to make penetrative runs through the middle, which is why I think we might see a much stronger season from Szoboszlai, who still had a good campaign last year, and from potentially Ryan Gravenberch, if he starts as that right eight. I expect it could be Curtis Jones, though. Either way, they're going to have a really strong season there. I think Endo is good to play that role. The other player I want to talk about is Stefan Bejkadic, because obviously he's had a few injuries over the last campaign, and that's why he didn't play a whole lot of football throughout it. But I actually think, looking at his skill set, he suits what Arne Slot wants to do perfectly, but maybe not in defensive midfield. Potentially in defensive midfield, but I wouldn't be surprised if... I think Slot may use him as defensive midfielder. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he looks to do what he did with Jordi Classy and play him in centre-half, because Bejkadic can play there, and Slot's shown he has no fears about playing a short player at centre-half. So I wouldn't be massively surprised. I'm not sure it would work in the Premier League.
That'd be my problem.
But I think it's something that Slot would look at doing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Bejkadic would still be suited to that DM role.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's going to be very intriguing to watch Liverpool as when the Premier League comes around in a couple of weeks' time, because there's a lot of unknowns with Slot. He has a bit. He can be quite mysterious in his ways in terms of you don't know when he's going to mix it up, you don't know what he's going to do, and he's happy to be a bit adventurous with things like that. So he's a... I mean, it'd be nice to see, wouldn't it, if something exciting like that happened. But it's hard to tell what he's going to do. But it's quite nice. It's quite refreshing to have that surprise element that a manager can bring coming into the Premier League.
And I think we might have that with a few managers this season, because you've got Kieran McKenna coming in, who's very direct with how his teams play. You've got Fabian Herzler, who has loads of crazy things that he's going to try and do with that Brighton side. And if they work, it's going to be ridiculous. And Arne Slot, who, again, has lots of very interesting tactical coaching principles. So I think it's going to be a very interesting season in that regard. Moving on to the 2-8s, you've got Szoboszlai and you've got Fabio Carvalho. I want to talk about Carvalho because I have no idea what they're going to do with him this season. He obviously went on loan to Hull for the back end of the last campaign, and he didn't exactly rip up trees at Hull, but I wouldn't be surprised if Slot looked to give him another shot. I don't think he's gone anywhere yet, from as far as I can tell. He's still at Liverpool. So what do they do with him now?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think he is a good player. He looked decent at Hull and had a few good cameos in there and was all right. But yeah, it's a really difficult one. I think he was a good signing, to be completely honest, when they first picked him up from Fulham. Yeah. But yeah, I think he's a good player, and he's given the opportunity in a role that he can play. He could be a really, really good player, especially if I'm not saying he should start every single week, but if he's that rotation to Szoboszlai, I think he's a good option.
Yeah, and I think he can also play on that left wing, which is something we need to talk about, because they've only got Luis Diaz. Now, obviously, Jota could play that role, Gakpo could play that role. However, they don't suit what Slot wants from a left winger, and I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think anyone will move on this summer, but I think next summer we may see Jota move on. I even think they'd be more likely to play Jota at right wing this season as a rotation with Salah and bring in someone for the left-hand side, because the key difference between the two wingers is that on the left-hand side you need someone that's going to hold the width a lot more and look to take the full-back on both ways. And while the right winger needs to do a similar job, the right winger, as we saw with Jan Minter last season at Feyenoord, has a lot more directness in their play in a Slot system. Because what we saw was that he had the highest, Jan Minter in the Feyenoord side had the highest progressive passes received per 90. I think it was something like 16.9 in the Eredivisie. So he's getting on the end of a lot of passes. And I think that they will look to do a similar thing this season, with the left-hand side being slightly more conservative and a lot of the play coming through the left-hand side, to then look to play the ball into the right-hand side and pick out the striker, the right eight, the Mohamed Salah making that run. So I think that will be how they look to hurt the opposition, how they look to score. On that right flank, or right 8, they've got Jones, Elliott, Gravenberch, who we've spoken about. I think they're all nice options. We could see Trent in that role. I wouldn't be hugely surprised if we do. But I quite like Jones, Elliott, Gravenberch. I think they're all good players with a part to play in this Liverpool side. Obviously, Harvey Elliott could play out on the right wing. They've got Salah there, they've got Doak there, they've got Gordon. I wouldn't be surprised if they look to add a bit more competition to Salah, especially considering I think Gordon's due another loan move. I don't think Kate Gordon's ready for or a loan move. I think he hasn't had one yet, has he? So I think they'll look to loan him out. I think Ben Doak could stay and compete for minutes, but I wouldn't be surprised if they loaned him out as well. And then obviously they've got to consider that Salah might be moving on next season. So I think another right winger may be something they look to target either this window or definitely next window. And then through the middle, we've got Gakpo, Nunez and Jota. I think Gakpo will start. I think Arne Slot is a big fan of Cody Gakpo and obviously had a really strong Euro, so I think Gakpo will be in line to start. I still think there's so much potential with Darwin Núñez. We've spoken about this time and time again, and I know we can't keep banking on potential, but I think there is so much there with Darwin Núñez.
He is a good player.
I think his movement, his timing, his off-the-ball stuff is elite. I think he's got all the makings of a world-class striker, apart from one key component, which is finishing. Yeah. And ultimately, you can get in that position 100 times. You can look like the best forward in the world, but if you don't score goals, you don't work as a striker. And so I think there are some question marks still around Darwin Núñez. He doesn't score consistently enough. He has way too many big chances missed. I think he ranked highest in the Premier League last season for big chances missed. He's very unfortunate that Lukaku doesn't play in the Premier League anymore to help him out with that stat. But I think with Núñez, there's still so much potential there that I think is still to be unlocked. Yeah, so I still think there's a little bit of I still think he deserves a bit more time. Another season. If we get to next summer and he's still not there, I think Liverpool look to move him on because it's between him and Jota really for another role. I don't really see where Jota fits at the moment. I know he spent a lot of last season out injured, so it's quite difficult to work out. He could play on the right wing, he could play out front, he could play on the left wing. Again, I don't think he suits what Slot wants from a left winger, but he can do the job. He's not a bad footballer at all. I do think Luis Diaz on the left flank, though, is going to be absolutely incredible this season. That's my big prediction. I think a lot of people sleeping on Luis Diaz. He's been injured for a few years. He's not been incredible. He has been incredible at times, but he's had a lot of injury concerns and rotation. I think he will have a huge season this year.
Like it.
That's my prediction.
Like it. Fair enough.
Let's move on to some potential transfers then. Now, the first one I want to look at is someone who could play both flanks and someone I think everyone will be familiar with. It's Kingsley Coman. Do you think initially this would be a good signing, Harry, or is it too much of a gamble?
I really like it. I really like Kingsley Coman. I think he is a very, very good player. He's a very dangerous player as well. His ability just to take players on and run past players is incredible. It's his directness. It's that ability to just run at people, and either he runs past them with his pace, or he sends them with a bit of skill or some brilliant footwork. He is a very, very good player. He causes problems for every team he plays against. This would be a very, very good deal.
Yeah, and what I like a lot about Coman is his unselfishness. You look at the statistics, and his non-pen goals and non-pen XG are really low, considering he plays in the Bundesliga, which is quite a high-scoring league. And actually his assists are really low as well, but I think the more key statistic is that expected assist stats, up at 0.25 per 90. Basically, that just shows that he is creating a lot of chances, but I just didn't put them away last season. Yeah. And so 79th percentile, I think he'd come in, and if you can get a player on that left-hand side, like Diaz, who will create a lot of chances, but also does still have that option to cut inside and have a shot, I think that's a really dangerous player to have. His biggest stat, those progressive carries, up in the 96th percentile. Again, we're looking at how Liverpool will progress that ball forwards, and a lot of it's going to be through that defensive midfielder, that pivot player. Yeah. But if he can pick out Coman and Coman can take it up the line, and suddenly Liverpool move from a transitional phase into that attacking phase, that's not a bad thing to have at all. And obviously those take-ons, as you say, in the 83rd percentile, 2.60, I believe, really good at taking players on. And if you can beat them and then look to find Núñez, Salah, other players like that in the penalty area, that's where they can really be dangerous next season. So I think Coman would be a really nice addition. And in addition to that, Bayern Munich looking to sell this summer. They don't want Kingsley Coman anymore. I think you could get a deal done for around £40 million, £50 million.
Really good.
I think that'd be a really good price to pay for a player who is a proven winner. Last 100%. Season was the first season in his professional career he didn't win the domestic league.
It's incredible
that he's in. So, I mean, obviously he's played for Bayern and PSG, two incredibly dominant sides, but there's nothing doubting that he has a natural winning prowess.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I think he'd be a really nice addition, and I think it's something Liverpool should be looking to improve that left-hand side, give a bit of competition with Diaz. considering they're going to be playing Champions League football this season, they've got the FA Cup, they've got other cup competitions. There's more than enough rotation minutes there. So Coman and Diaz can both play a very large amount of minutes, and I don't think that would be an issue. No. Onto the right-hand side then, and some competition for Mohamed Salah, and a potential replacement is Johan Bakayoko.
Ooh.
Now, I do always have reservations about Eredivisie players, especially Eredivisie right-wingers, because I have PTSD from Hakim Ziyech, and we all know how the Antony deal's worked out. So I think in that regard, there will be some doubts around Bakayoko. However, obviously, Antony was a great dribbler in the Eredivisie. That didn't work out. I do think Bakayoko is more likely to work out. Bakayoko reminds me of Jeremy Doku in a lot of ways. He's great at taking players on, and he's great at carrying the ball forwards. 99% off progressive carries last season, and that shows how he likes to get that ball at his feet and just drive it forwards. And I think on that right wing, well, progressive carries might not be the most important stat for him, because obviously he's going to be receiving the ball in quite attacking areas. If he can still take, because a progressive carry is anywhere over 20 yards, so even if you find that ball just over the halfway line, he's very good at then carrying that ball forward and taking you into that final third. So I think that would be really nice. Stylistically, he's a little bit different to Mohamed Salah. Salah's your traditional inside forward, likes to cut inside and get a shot away. Some of his most archetypal goals are where you see him beat the left back, he's absolutely gone, he cuts inside, way too much time and space. I can picture one against Chelsea which just curls it into that far corner. That's what he loves to do. Johan Bakayoko, a little bit different. He's got the ability to take a player either way, which adds a little bit more threat to his game in one-on-one situations, because he could go inside, he could go outside and cross the ball in. So he's very dangerous in that regard, and I think bringing him on next season in rotation with Mohamed Salah, last 20 minutes, if you're bringing Bakayoko on, that's a very dangerous asset to have, and he will look to be starting, I think, as you go later into the campaign. And I think if next season Salah is to leave, even if it's for a free transfer, if you've already replaced him with Bakayoko and he's had a year to bed into the squad, the chance of that being a successful transition from Salah to Bakayoko, that passing of the mantle, is more likely. So I think that would be a really nice addition, bringing Bakayoko and looking to replace Salah before you need to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Bakayoko is a player that causes a lot of problems for teams. As you say, it's that unpredictability about him that makes it so hard to defend, because you see your one-footed players, or you see your players, defenders can react to that. You can't react to a player who could go either way, because whichever way you commit, he just goes the other way, and suddenly he's taken a defender out of the game. And the fact he can do that for multiple players, but also, as you said, take you from one phase right to another, completely change the narrative of the game, because 1 minute you're defending, he carries it out the pitch, and suddenly you've got a goal scoring opportunity. That's what he does, and yes, he might not be able to do that too much with the way Slot plays, but still, he's going to play a massive part if they did bring him in on that right hand side, and I mean, he's a very, very exciting player as well. Yeah,
and I really like the difference between Bakayoko and Coman. Coman is a very technical, very intelligent player. And then Bakayoko is a very physical, very fast player, and he uses those skills to his advantage. And I think they both would work. They'd complement each other really nicely. So I think that would be a really good addition, both of them. I mean, obviously, you've got to consider price tags, and you think Bakayoko, that's got to be looking north of 50 million. You think Coman, yes, Bayern are desperate to sell, but I still think they'd be holding out for 40. Maybe a little bit less if you can negotiate that down a bit. But I think that is, even if you can get them both at under 100 million combined, that's a fantastic bit of business.
Really good.
I think it looked to be slightly over, but even then, you're replacing Mohamed Salah well if he does look to move on next summer. Even if he doesn't look to move on next summer, I think the summer after you'd definitely be needing to replace him, and then you'd be giving some really solid backup to Kingsley Coman. And then if you were to sell Nunes or Jota next summer, or even Gakpo, those three, whichever the one of them performs worst, I think would be the one you look to move on. And I think you would be able to recoup a lot of that money, because all three of those players are excellent, and you could get a high fee for them. And then let's look at centre half, because obviously we mentioned earlier Van Dijk out of contract soon. He is such an important player in this Liverpool side, but you've got to have an option to bring off the bench. I don't think Gomez is a good enough option to play that centre half role. I think he will start left back, and that does create an issue with how you rotate effectively. So it's an ambitious one, but Piero Hincapié. Obviously, he's been a Bayer Leverkusen this season, and the problem for Liverpool is that they are not negotiating from a position of power. I think actually the perfect signing for Liverpool would have been Ricardo Calafiori. Because whoever comes in will likely start where Gomez is, and then Gomez becomes a rotation option in that situational back three. Either playing right centre half, left centre half, or left back. So The problem that Liverpool have now is because they're acting too late into this window, and they're not in the same position as Arsenal, they're going to have to either just lump it and not have anyone, or they're going to have to overpay for Hincapié. I think Calafiori would have been a better tactical fit at Liverpool than he would have been at Arsenal. And in that deal, Liverpool would have been in the position of power because Calafiori, with Motta gone, with Xerxes leaving, with Bologna in a transitional period now, because they've lost everyone, I think they'd have been operating from a position of power. They'd be able to get Calafiori. The issue that Liverpool have is, one, Bayer Leverkusen are in a position of power. They've not lost anyone. They've got Xabi Alonso at the helm. They just won the Bundesliga and lost one game all season. That's very difficult to pry someone away from, especially when there is such an unknown about Liverpool this season. They haven't got Jurgen Klopp anymore. They've got a lot of key players looking to leave in the next few seasons, you would assume. There's a lot of unknowns, but with a big enough price to pay off Leverkusen and enough belief instilled in Hincapié, I think this could happen. I think it would likely be one of the most expensive centre-half signings of all time. I think you'd be looking around 70 million, which is a lot, admittedly, but I think he's worth it. Let's look at his FBref profile. 99th percentile for progressive carries in that position. Now, that's not too crucial, but it does show if he was playing that left-back role, he can carry that out of defence and bring you forward a few yards. You've got tackles in the 87th percentile, tackles 1 in the 91st percentile. That's very effective numbers. He's clearly a very good tackler. We saw that with Leverkusen. He was an integral part of that defence, and actually, I think he replaces what Van Dijk brings you perfectly. A really good tackler. He may not be as physically imposing as Virgil van Dijk, but he's not small. He's not weak at all. So I think he'd be able to come across and do quite well. 78th percentile for tackles and interceptions, 52nd for interceptions. His aerials 1 is another thing that really worries me. However, we've said this before with Bundesliga defenders, because the ball isn't in the air a whole lot, there isn't much need for aerials 1. So I'm not sure it translates very nicely, because obviously when in the Bundesliga, if the ball's going in the air, it's because Füllkrug or Guirassy are there, and so you're not going to beat them in the air very often, and so you can lose a lot of those aerial duels. And the Bundesliga, they do tend to cross the ball a little bit less than in the Premier League. So I think that is a less important statistic. I think those would naturally increase if you came to the Premier League. As I say, really good at progressive carries. The other key stat, progressive passes. So he's really good at spraying those balls forward. Now again, because of how he likes to use McAllister or how he used Matt's Vifer slot, I think that's not too integral. But it is nice to have a centre half or left back who can play these lovely balls forward and can pick players out of possession. That's really positive. And again, we speak about how they're going to progress the ball. Having someone in the defence who can do that, similarly to Virgil van Dijk, is a really nice quality. So I think that would be good. Pass completed, 72.58, ranks in the 93rd percentile. He's very good in possession, and that's exactly what Slot will want.
Yeah, no, I think Hincapié is a very, very good player. Had a phenomenal season at Leverkusen. Obviously, I think there is a question of why would he leave. You'd be swapping an invincible Leverkusen side who've looked phenomenal and are phenomenal to a gamble which is an unknown Liverpool side. But it's the Premier League, and we know how good Liverpool could be. And if he believes in the project, if he believes in what Slot is trying to do, then it will pay off massively and he will thrive. So it's one of those in football, it would make sense. It would be a very expensive deal. It would be one of the biggest deals of the window if it was pulled off. But would Liverpool have a hell of a centre-half?
Yeah, very true. I think these will all be good signings. The other thing I want to mention is obviously the best stylistic fit, because he can play both flanks, would be Nico Williams. But I will be bored, I think everyone will be bored, if we have to talk about Nico Williams every single video, because he would be the perfect addition to all of the top sides.
Yeah.
It looked like he's going to stay now at Bilbao anyway. Apparently that has come out recently. He's going to stay at Bilbao this season, which is interesting. And ruins all the videos we've made. But I think it'd be a great fit. Don't think it's going to happen. There is just so much competition for his signature.
Yeah.
So I think Coman would be a really nice option. I think Bakayoko could be a really nice option. Anyone that fits those kind of profiles, Slot should be looking at right now.
Yeah.
Are you worried that Liverpool haven't made any signings yet, or do you think they're okay?
No, I'd be 100% concerned as a Liverpool fan. I know there's still 2 weeks to go, but if I was in their shoes, I would be frustrated. A new manager coming in that plays a very different style to what your old manager did, and he hasn't changed any of the personnel. It is a huge gamble on hoping that this Liverpool squad will make the adjustment quickly, because if they don't, even if it takes them 5-10 games to get going, those 10 games are going to be really tough. They're going to drop a load of points, and suddenly they're going to find themselves quite far off the top lot already. So they've got to be careful, because if they don't get those first games right, massive pressure on Slot after that. So I would expect to see transfers before the start of the season, but they've got to get on with it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective. I don't necessarily disagree, but to an extent I think that when you look at other dynasties that have failed in the past, you look at how other transition between dynasties, like when Ferguson left Manchester United, it's the example everyone's gone to this summer because of there are comparisons between Ferguson and Klopp because they both embodied the club during their time in charge. When David Moyes came in and United just sort of uprooted everything, it all fell apart. But actually, what it has to be is a natural and gentle easing of moving from Klopp to Arne Slot.
Yeah, I just worried that they're easing it in too slowly, too gently.
Potentially. But I think a lot of this side is good enough anyway. I think a lot of it will be able to play the roles. And actually, the gaps we look at in the side, left centre half, yes, Gomez could play there. And Robertson and Tsimikas could play that left back role. And it would work. It may not be excellent, but it will work.
Yeah.
Left wing, Jota, Gakpo, Nunes could all play there. It may not be, again, it might not be perfect, but it will work. Not so sure on the right wing, but Doak could come in and show us all up, or Jota could play on that right wing. I think it would be effective as well. So I don't necessarily think they have to sign players, but if they want to be competing for the league this season, I think that they haven't done anything yet. And Arsenal strengthened, City have strengthened, not that they need to, and so therefore I do think Liverpool. I do think they have been a little bit too inactive in the market.
Yeah.
I think at least a signing or two just to sort of refresh that camp is necessary.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see. They've not lost a whole lot, to be fair. Thiago and Adrian, the only players leaving that of note, and I didn't think it was worth making a graphic up for those two players. Oh, and Calvin Rams, I think, went out online. So, they've not replaced any of them, but I didn't think that was too important. But, yeah, I think that's everything for today's video. Do get your thoughts in the comments down below. I'm sure there'll be some Liverpool fans with some thoughts on everything we said in this video. They hopefully leave constructive criticism or positive feedback if you want, whatever you prefer. If you're enjoying these previews, there could be another one on screen now. We spoke about Leicester City and their chances of survival this season, and obviously you can go check out the playlist. We've previewed every club so far, and in preparation for the season we will be doing all the clubs, so look out for that in the Premier League. But that's everything from us today. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.